My wife said, she's just a friend from yoga. So why did she have a second phone hidden in her gym bag? I waited, watched, counted every 6 p.m. class. Then I followed her, straight to a motel with a man who called her babe. I canceled our vacation, drained the savings, and left a note with his name on the fridge. She came home smiling. She stopped smiling when she saw the camera on. They say every neighborhood has secrets, but I didn't expect mine to be sleeping in the house next door. We moved into Evergreen Circle on a sunny Saturday in April. U-Haul truck, cardboard boxes, New Hope packed in tight. My wife, Emma, smiled the whole ride there like it was the beginning of something. And it was just not the kind of beginning either of us had planned. This was supposed to be our reset. A fresh chapter after the worst year of our marriage. We'd been fighting too much. The kind of fights where nothing gets thrown, but everything still breaks. I suggested the move. I picked the neighborhood. I wanted distance, from our problems, and from the woman who nearly ruined my life. Emma was hopeful. Naive, maybe. She believed we could rebuild. I believed I could bury the past deep enough that it wouldn't follow us. And for the first 2 weeks, it worked. I mowed the lawn. Emma planted lavender by the mailbox. We got invited to a block party. We drank sangria with the Mitchells across the street and played cornhole with a guy named Chuck. Normal things. Simple things. Things that make you forget how complicated life used to be. Until the day she moved in next door. I was trimming the hedges when I saw the car, sleek, black, tinted windows. I recognized it immediately. My stomach flipped before the door even opened. And then she stepped out. Alyssa. Same long legs. Same confident smile. Same perfume I used to breathe in when I shouldn't have been anywhere near her. For a split second, she looked straight at me and smiled, like we were old friends, like she didn't have the power to shatter everything I'd built. I froze. I felt the shears slip in my hand and stab into the mulch. Emma came out onto the porch, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. Babe, she called. We have a new neighbor. Alyssa turned, beaming. Hi, I'm Alyssa. Just moved in from the city. Nice to meet you. Emma handed her a glass like they'd been waiting for each other. Welcome to the neighborhood. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just smiled. A tight, fake smile I hadn't used since the last time I saw Alyssa 2 years ago, when I ended the affair. When I told her it was over. When I begged her to forget me. Apparently, she didn't. Emma invited her over for dinner. That night. Just like that. Alyssa accepted, like she'd been planning it all along. I walked into the house like a man marching into his own funeral. Later that night, while Emma set the table and Alyssa laughed in the kitchen, I stood at the edge of the hallway, listening to them talk about Pinterest boards and yoga studios. My wife was bonding with my biggest mistake, my deepest secret, and the worst part? Alyssa was pretending we'd never met. But I could feel her eyes on me across the room, taunting, daring, waiting. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a setup, and I was already 3 steps behind. It's strange how a smile can haunt you. Alyssa's was like that, warm enough to fool a crowd, sharp enough to cut through steel. She wore it every time she spoke to Emma, my wife, like it was a mask she perfected just for this show. That first dinner was a performance, the kind of tension that makes your spine sweat. Emma served pasta. Alyssa brought red wine. They giggled about how small the world was, how rare it is to find someone you click with right away. I watched them, wondering how much Alyssa was going to reveal, and when. Every second, she didn't say anything was worse than if she had. She looked at me twice. Just 2 times all evening. Both times she held my gaze a second too long. Both times Emma didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and she was just pretending. That's the thing about living inside a lie. You never really know who's acting anymore. After dinner, Emma turned on some music. Alyssa leaned into the island counter and asked if she could help with dishes. Of course, Emma said. He never does them anyway. Alyssa laughed. Sounds familiar. It was casual, innocent, but I felt it like a knife between my ribs. She was mocking me, testing how close she could get to the edge without falling over. That night, after she left, Emma curled up beside me in bed and said, "Isn't she amazing? I haven't connected with someone like that in forever." I kissed her forehead and said nothing, because the truth would have burned the house down. The next few days were worse. Every morning, I'd see Alyssa watering her roses. Every evening, she'd wave to Emma when she walked our dog. They had brunch at a bistro downtown. They joined a local yoga class together. She was weaving herself into our life like a thread in a sweater. One pull, and everything could unravel. One night, Emma came home with wine-stained lips and a story. "You know Alyssa used to be married?" she said, pouring another glass. I felt my stomach tighten. "Oh," she said, "he cheated on her. Broke her heart. Can you believe that? Men are such dogs." I nodded. "Yeah, terrible." She said she thought she found the one, until she found out he was married the whole time. I almost dropped my glass. Emma looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I gave her none, just a tight-lipped smile. She leaned in and whispered, "Can you imagine that? Living next door to someone like that?" I couldn't tell if she was testing me or warning me. The next day, Alyssa texted me from an anonymous number. "Miss me." I blocked it. She texted again from another. "You looked nervous last night. Relax." I haven't told her yet. That night, Emma was quiet. She sat across the dinner table, barely touching her food. "What's wrong?" I asked. She shook her head. "Nothing. Just weird dreams lately." "What kind?" She stared at me a little too long. "The kind that feel like memories." I barely slept that night. I kept dreaming Alyssa was standing at the edge of our bed, whispering my secrets into Emma's ear while she smiled in her sleep. A few days later, it got worse. Emma forgot her phone at home. I was going to take it to her, until it buzzed. A message from Alyssa. "He lies. Just ask him about Chicago." Chicago, the city where it all began. Where I met Alyssa during a 3-day marketing conference. Where it started with a hotel bar and ended with a hotel bed. Where I promised her things I never meant, and swore she was a mistake I'd never repeat. I should have known Alyssa never lets go. I didn't tell Emma about the message. I pretended I never saw it. But I could feel the storm gathering. And then one morning, I walked into the kitchen and found Alyssa sitting at our island, wearing one of Emma's robes, drinking coffee, laughing with my wife, like she belonged there. And all she said when she saw me was, "Morning, stranger," like she was daring me to explode. I was starting to realize something terrifying. Alyssa wasn't just here to ruin my marriage. She was here to become a part of it. There's a moment when you realize you've lost control of your own life. For me, it happened on a Thursday morning. Emma was humming in the kitchen. Alyssa was at our table, again, eating toast, drinking our coffee, laughing like she'd always lived here. They were watching some trashy reality show on Emma's iPad, comparing notes like teenage best friends. Emma leaned over to show Alyssa something, and they burst into giggles. And I just stood there, a ghost in my own house. Alyssa made eye contact with me, again, just for a second, but enough to twist the knife. She was becoming untouchable. Emma trusted her completely now. Every weekend, it was, "Let's go wine tasting with Alyssa," or "Girls' spa day at Alyssa's place." My wife, who once grilled me about why I was 5 minutes late from the gym, now disappeared for hours with her, no questions asked. And I was stuck, silent, trapped between guilt and fear. Because how do you tell your wife that her new best friend is your ex-mistress? That she's sleeping 10 feet away, waiting to blow up your life? One night, Emma came home drunk. The kind of drunk that makes her too honest. "She told me you're the quiet type," she slurred. "But I think you're just hiding things." I laughed it off, tried to play dumb. But that night, I barely slept. The next morning, I checked Emma's phone. I hated myself for it, but I needed to know. Their texts were endless. Emojis, memes, photos, inside jokes. Alyssa called her Emmy. They had a group chat with 2 other wives from the neighborhood. And in the middle of it all, one message from Alyssa chilled my blood. Men like that always crack. Just takes the right pressure. No context. No timestamp. Just sitting there like a loaded gun. I deleted it. Then spent the whole day waiting for fallout that never came. But things only got worse. Alyssa started crossing lines. Subtle at first. A comment while Emma was out of the room. "Still sleep on the left side of the bed?" A dropped photo from our Chicago trip, tucked into a gardening book she accidentally lent Emma. One night, while I was walking the trash bins out, she appeared behind me like a ghost. "You know," she said, "she's never going to believe you. Not when I tell her." I spun. "Why are you doing this?" She stepped closer. "Because you promised me forever, and then you gave it to someone else." Her voice was soft, but her eyes were fire. "I told you I'd see you again. I moved states. I moved next door." And then she walked off, like we hadn't just lit a match between us. That weekend, Emma invited her over again for game night. "Just the 3 of us," she said. "Come on, it'll be fun." Fun. We played charades. Alyssa acted out unfaithful by mimicking lipstick on a collar. Emma guessed it in seconds. They laughed. I didn't. Emma noticed. "You okay?" she asked. "Headache," I muttered. Alyssa leaned over. "He gets those when he's guilty. Don't you, sweetheart?" I nearly flipped the table. After she left, Emma asked me directly, "Did you know her before we moved here?" My throat closed. My mind spun. Lie? Tell the truth? Half-truth? "I met her once at a conference," I said. "Barely. Didn't even talk." Emma stared at me. Then she smiled. "Okay." But it wasn't okay. It was the beginning of the end. Because the next day, Alyssa sent me a message. No words. Just a photo. Of me, shirtless, in a hotel room. Next to her. Smiling. And in the background, my wedding ring on the nightstand. She was done playing games. Now she was going for blood. The photo changed everything. I stared at it on my phone for a full minute. My face. My bare chest. Her hand on my thigh. The edge of a pillow with the hotel's logo. And behind us, unmistakable, my wedding ring on the nightstand like a discarded truth. Alyssa had been holding on to this for years. Waiting. I deleted the message, but my hands were shaking. My brain was screaming. I paced the kitchen, the hallway, the garage. I opened my mouth to scream, but all that came out was silence. That photo wasn't just proof. It was ammunition. And I knew Alyssa. She wasn't bluffing. She didn't care about blackmail. She didn't want money. She wanted Emma to know, to burn me to the ground, and stand in the ashes smiling. I needed to act. That night, I told Emma I was going on a business trip for 2 days. I wasn't. I just needed to breathe, to think, to strategize. I booked a cheap motel across town and sat alone in the silence, trying to remember how I got here. One stupid mistake, one passionate weekend, and now my entire life was hanging by a thread held in Alyssa's hand. I thought about confronting her, bargaining, but you can't reason with someone who already decided your pain is the payoff. On the second night, I got a call from Emma. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I lied. Just work stuff." "You good?" There was a pause. "Yeah." Alyssa came by earlier. I sat up. "Oh." She said she wanted to borrow a ladder. But then she asked me something strange. My heart stopped. "What?" She asked if I believed in second chances. Then she just stared at me. I couldn't speak. Emma continued. "Do you believe in second chances?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning shot. I returned the next morning. The air in the house was heavier. The kind of heavy that clings to your clothes. Emma didn't ask about the trip. She didn't mention the ladder. Or the conversation. She just said, "We're going to Alyssa's tonight. She's hosting a few neighbors. Be ready by 7. It was a trap. I knew it. But I couldn't say no. That night, I wore my best smile. Alyssa opened the door wearing red. Of course she did. The living room smelled like wine and lavender. Music played low. Neighbors laughed in the background. But this wasn't a party. It was a performance. Halfway through, Alyssa stood and raised a glass. "Cheers," she said. "To new beginnings, old mistakes, and truths that finally find their voice." Everyone clapped. Except me. Emma watched me. Not smiling. Not angry. Just observing. I couldn't breathe. Then Alyssa handed me a small envelope. "For you," she said sweetly. "Just a little memory." I didn't open it. I left it on the coffee table and walked out the front door. The next day, I opened it alone in the garage. Inside was a copy of the photo and a sticky note that read, "I'll tell her Monday, unless you do it first." 2 days. That night, I barely slept. I stared at Emma across the bed, her breathing soft, her fingers curled into the blanket like she was holding on to peace she didn't realize was dying. I couldn't tell her, but I couldn't lose her either. And then, like the universe was laughing, I noticed something odd. Emma's phone buzzed at 2:43 a.m. She didn't wake. I leaned over. The message preview read, "Don't forget, tomorrow, same time. I'll bring the wine this time," winking face. It wasn't from Alyssa. It was from a number saved as C. I picked up the phone. There were more messages. "I miss you. Did he suspect anything? You looked stunning in that green dress." My blood ran cold. My wife had her own secret. And suddenly it hit me. This wasn't just Alyssa's game anymore. Emma was playing one of her own. And I had no idea who the real enemy was anymore. The moment I saw that message on Emma's phone, something inside me cracked. "I'll bring the wine this time," winking face. My wife. My wife was sending flirtatious late-night texts to someone saved as just C. A placeholder. A mask. A decoy. Just like me. For days I'd been obsessed with Alyssa, my past. But this was new. This was now. Emma had a secret of her own. And suddenly, all my guilt flipped into anger. I wasn't the only liar in the room. That morning, I couldn't eat. I couldn't speak. Emma made coffee like normal, humming a little tune under her breath like we weren't both dancing on the edge of ruin. When she left for work, I did something I swore I wouldn't. I followed her. She didn't go to the clinic like she said. Instead, she drove to a small bookstore on the edge of town. Independent, cozy, the kind with handwritten staff pics and vinyl playing on the speakers. She parked. Walked in. Alone. I waited. 5 minutes later, a man entered. Late 30s. Glasses. Nice jacket. The kind of guy who drinks craft coffee and quotes poetry. She met him by the philosophy section. They didn't hug. But their closeness, the way they smiled, leaned in, told me everything. I snapped a photo. Hands shaking. Then I drove away, not sure whether I was more heartbroken or relieved. I wasn't the only sinner in this house. But that relief didn't last. That evening, Emma acted normal. Asked about my day. Cooked chicken parmesan like it was just another Thursday. I stared at her across the dinner table, that secret inside me screaming. She finally looked up and said, "You're quiet. Something on your mind." I almost laughed. On my mind. Try 3 years of cheating, one mistress turned neighbor, and now a wife who's secretly in love with a guy who probably writes her poems. But instead, I said, just work stuff. She smiled. It'll pass. I wanted to ask her about her day, about C, about the wine, about the way she smiled at him like I never existed. But I didn't, because I realized something. She wasn't afraid. She was playing me. And then it hit me like a truck. What if Alyssa knew? What if this whole thing wasn't about me cheating? What if it was about Emma? What if Alyssa's revenge was a cover for something deeper? The next day, I confronted Alyssa. I waited outside her garage and caught her before she left for yoga or brunch or whatever suburban warlocks do. We need to talk, I said. She smiled like she'd won. Of course we do. Are you working with her? She tilted her head. Emma? Oh, sweetheart, you still think you're the main character? I stepped back, the blood draining from my face. She stepped closer. You really think your wife's little book club persona was real? You think she didn't know exactly who I was when we moved here? My mouth went dry. She came to me. Alyssa whispered. 2 months before you even knew we were neighbors. Told me everything. About your cheating. About the Chicago trip. About how she already knew. No. She wanted to watch you crumble. And she wanted help. She leaned in. So I moved in next door. I couldn't breathe. I felt like the air had been vacuumed out of my lungs. Alyssa straightened her bag and said, Now do you get it? This isn't your story anymore. I watched her drive away, my heart in free fall. Back at home, I tore through drawers, files, old emails. I needed proof. Some sign I wasn't crazy. And I found it. An old lease application. In Emma's handwriting. The address. Alyssa's house. Date. 6 months before we even moved into this neighborhood. She helped Alyssa move in. She placed her next door. They built this together. And I was the punchline. That night, Emma came home early. She found me in the living room, the photo in one hand, the lease in the other. I know, I said. She looked at me calmly. Good. And then she said something that froze me. Do you want to burn or beg? Her words weren't a question. They were a sentence. Emma stood there with a calm that chilled me to the bone. Like she'd already lived through this moment in her head 100 times, and every version of it ended with me shattered. What does that mean? I asked, my voice cracking. She took her coat off, hung it, sat down. Which do you prefer? She asked again. Burning or begging? I laughed bitterly. Is this revenge? Some drawn-out punishment fantasy? You knew about Alyssa and waited years to set this up? No, she said simply. I knew about all of them. I froze. What? She leaned forward. You think Alyssa was your big mistake? Cute. I know about Lila. About the Vegas trip. About the assistant you swore was just too eager. I blinked. My throat closed. How? I hired a PI. 3 years ago. Right after you left your phone on the kitchen counter unlocked. I saw enough. Then I dug. Then I started planning. Planning. She didn't say it with anger. She said it like a project manager. This neighborhood, she continued, I picked it. Alyssa, I brought her in. You thought you were cheating in secret, but I turned your whole life into a terrarium. You were the specimen. We watched everything. I sank into the couch. You're insane, I whispered. No, she said, standing now. I'm done. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small recorder. Clicked it on. Let's talk, she said. Let's tell the truth. Every last detail. I stood. You think I'm going to confess on tape? She shrugged. You already did. You've been on audio for months. Hidden mics. Car, garage, bedroom. I stumbled back. Then, another voice. Behind me. Hello, love. It was Alyssa. She walked in through the back door, uninvited, familiar, casual. She carried a tablet. On screen, me. In the motel. Talking to myself. Pacing. Angry. Rambling about everything. You monologue when you're nervous. Alyssa smirked. Emma handed her a glass of wine. They toasted. And that's when I realized. They weren't allies anymore. They were friends. Bonded in betrayal. I'll sue you, I said, voice rising. This is illegal. Wiretapping. Emma cut me off. No. What's illegal is using our joint account to pay for hotel rooms for your flings. What's illegal is hiding income in a secret PayPal you thought I didn't know about. What's illegal is the offshore transfer I traced last week. She pulled out a manila envelope and dropped it on the coffee table. Bank statements. Emails. Screenshots. You're not just a cheater, she said. You're a criminal. I was drowning. She stepped forward, inches from my face. You have 48 hours. Resign from the firm. Transfer me full ownership of the house. Sign over the savings account. Or, she tapped the recorder. I leak everything to the IRS, your clients, your parents, the press. I stood there, heart pounding. No way out. Until I saw it. A crack. You want a war? I said. Emma tilted her head. You think I'm scared of exposure? I'll blow this whole thing up. I'll tell everyone about you. About your little bookstore boy. About how you gaslit me, manipulated me, stalked me. You're not some hero, Emma. You're a monster in heels. Silence. Then, slowly, Alyssa turned to Emma. You didn't tell me about the bookstore guy. Emma's jaw twitched. And for the first time, her mask slipped. Alyssa stared at her. Was he part of the plan? Emma didn't answer. I laughed. Oh, I said, look at that. Maybe the perfect team isn't so perfect after all. And that's when Emma did something I didn't expect. She grabbed the tablet from Alyssa, slammed it on the table, and said, this ends now. Then she looked at me. You have 24 hours, not 48. Sign everything over, or the footage goes live. She walked out. Alyssa followed, but not before glaring at her. The room was quiet. I sat there in the wreckage. My life burned around me. And somehow, I smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I saw the flaw. They trusted each other. Now they don't. And that is how I'll win. They gave me 24 hours. I used 10. Not because I was scared, but because I'd finally stopped playing defense. My entire marriage, I was outsmarted by a woman who pretended she was quiet, forgiving, harmless. I underestimated her. Not anymore. While Emma and Alyssa planned my downfall over wine and Spotify playlists, I made my move. First, I went to the firm. I handed in my resignation letter, but with a quiet clause buried in the digital metadata, a legal poison pill that would trigger a freeze on our joint assets the moment any press leak happened. It wasn't elegant, but it was legal. My old college roommate, a tax attorney, owed me a favor. Second, I paid a visit to the man from the bookstore, Cameron. Turns out, he wasn't just poetry and charm. He was married to a woman named Jody, who had no idea her husband had been seeing someone named Emma for over a year. I showed her the photos. Then I handed her Emma's address. That evening, I returned home and waited. Emma walked in like she owned the night, holding a new bottle of Cabernet. She didn't notice the USB drive taped under the kitchen table, recording everything. She didn't notice I had printed photos of her and Cameron at that bookstore, neatly placed under her wine glass. She sat, looked at me with pity. Time's up, she said. I assume everything's signed. I smiled. I sent it all to my lawyer. With a time delay, upload to the cloud. Triggered by, well now. She froze. And Emma, I said quietly, I know about Cameron. Her eyes flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, I said, sliding the photo across the table. She didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The silence was confirmation enough. Just then, the doorbell. She flinched. I stood. That must be Jody. Her face crumbled. I opened the door. It wasn't Jody. It was Alyssa. But she didn't look smug anymore. She looked shaken. She's been lying to both of us, she said. Emma told me you were stalking her. That you threatened her. That you wanted to control her again. I glanced back. Emma's face had gone pale. And you believed her? I asked. Alyssa pulled out her phone. Pressed play. It was a voicemail. Emma's voice. He thinks he's in control. He's going to snap soon. Just stay close. You're the bait. Once he breaks, I'll have the cops on my side. Alyssa's hands were trembling. You used me, she whispered. Emma stood. You knew what this was. No, Alyssa said. I thought you were hurt. That this was justice. But you played me, Emma. Like you played him. The tension in the room thickened. That's when the real fireworks began. My phone buzzed. Email alert. I opened it. Live link to a cloud backup. Emma had uploaded the blackmail footage herself. Accidentally. Alyssa saw it too. Her face collapsed. You're recording everything, aren't you? I nodded. Just like you both did. Emma lunged for the recorder on the table. I let her have it. Because I already had 3 backups uploaded. It was over. But I wasn't done. Tomorrow morning, I said, the footage goes to the press, the firm, and the IRS. Unless you agree to 3 things. She sat back down. 1. You walk away. From the house, the accounts, the lies. You disappear. Her lips curled. And 2. You write a confession. Public. Signed. You admit to stalking, manipulation, coercion, and wiretapping. And 3, she asked, voice low. I leaned in. You leave Alyssa out of it. Emma flinched. She looked at Alyssa, then at me, then at the printed photos. And finally, she whispered, fine. But I saw it. The way her hands curled, the tension in her jaw. She wasn't done. She was stalling. So I made one final move. I handed her a phone. On the screen was a video. Of her. With Cameron. At his place. A recording I didn't take. Alyssa did. Why? I asked her later. She shrugged. I knew you'd need it. And just like that, we were allies again, if only briefly. Emma signed the papers. She packed. She left. And just like that, it was over. Almost. 1 week later, I found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. Labeled, for when she comes back. It was from Alyssa. Inside the drive, every secret, every lie. Not just Emma's. Mine, too. She wasn't giving me a gift. She was giving me a warning. The war might be over, but trust? That's never coming back.